How can I protect my kids from suffering? You can't. You can't protect your kids from suffering, and I would probably say you shouldn't. I don't think that we put them in a position where our kids have to suffer, but I don't think that we should ever assume that we can save them from all suffering. They will suffer. Hardship will happen in their life, and hopefully all of that will continue to show them the power of the gospel that sustains them. So even in their suffering, I think you can use it as an opportunity to teach them about the reality of God's power even in our hardships. I'm just reminded of a story that I heard about a guy. It's somewhat related. He was a man who lost his son in the military. And he was serving. He was killed in battle. And this man was grieving, and he was with the chaplain and said, "Where was God when my son died?" And there was this long pause. And the chaplain so wisely said, "Well, I suppose God was in the same place he was when his son died." And if you think about the wisdom of that answer, he's saying, listen, God's experienced losing his own son. You're suffering, child, believer, whatever it is that you've had. It's hard for you, but it's nothing compared to what God sacrificed for the sake of us knowing him. But I love the statement. I suppose God was still in the same place when he lost his son. God never loses control. God's always seated on the throne. He's sovereign over every situation. So for my kids, when they come home and say, well, this friend's being mean to me, or I'm suffering in this way. Kid problems are drastically different, as we all know, but they feel like true suffering to them. I don't belittle their suffering, but I use the suffering as a platform to say, but there's a God who loves you, who's sovereign over all of this suffering. He's using it in your life. So let's talk about how he might be using it in your life. And usually I try to get that to the God of all comfort is comforting you, so how can you comfort someone else? So God comforts you in your suffering. How can you comfort someone else who might be suffering in the same way? And I try, especially if my child is not a believer, to use it to proclaim the gospel to them. Did you know that God forsook his own son so that you could be saved? The pain that you feel right now, God has a solution for it. He gave his own son so that you could have a relationship with him. And he's the God of all comfort and joy, and I'll go into that and try my best to explain that. So use the gospel as an opportunity to speak to your kids about, use suffering to you, and as an opportunity to speak to your kids about the gospel. I like that. That's a good. Is that helpful? Helpful? Good? Good.